Of the live interactive sessions for sustainable transportation systems. I am Sethi Vinayagam, a PhD scholar in the Civil Engineering Department at IIT Madras. Okay, so let's start with an overview of what was taught in week 5. So in the previous week, we were looking at the environmental impact assessment, right, and different case studies related to that. And week 5, the first lecture was also a case study for an EAA project. So this was related to the Vizhinjam International Deepwater Seaport that is built in Kerala. Okay, so with that, the EAA part was concluded. Okay, with this last and the fifth case study, right? So as we have seen in the previous weeks, so this case study also looked into the different aspects of this particular project, right? So we looked at who is the agency, what is the purpose of this particular project, right? What are the benefits that comes out of this, and also what are some of the issues that were foreseen, and what mitigation measures were planned when undertaking this project. Okay, so that was lecture number 1. Lecture number 2, so we moved from EIA into the concept of land use and planning, land use planning. Okay, so we were introduced to what is what do we mean by land use, and what is the concept of planning a land use of a region, right? And then we looked at how transportation plays a part in when it comes to land use planning. All right, so we saw that both land use as well as transportation systems, so they influence each other, right? So how a land use is of a particular region is planned is influenced by what is the transportation system being available, and also uh, the reverse is also true. The existing transportation system will also influence the land use of a particular region. And then in the third lecture, so we went more from an overview into specifics of what are the specific objectives that we are looking for when we say we are planning for a land use, right? So whether it is economic development, whether it is better and efficient use of the land resources, the allocation, the acquisition of land, so all that. So we looked at as objectives of land use planning, right? And also the specific needs and types of the zoning, right? So zoning is a particular concept that we use. So what we mean by zones is a particular region of a land, right? So we divide the land into different zones, right? So as a part of this land use planning, we divide them into different zones, like residential zones, industrial zones, commercial zones, and so on, right? So why do we do that? And also what are the different types of zones that are being used? So these were covered in lecture number 3. In the fourth lecture, we looked at a specific aspect of this land use planning, which is the transit oriented development approach, right? So which is planning the land resources in such a way that people make use of transit as their main mode of transport, right? So rather than using private vehicles, so the development which is planned in such a way that it is favorable for people to use transit systems, right? So the needs, again, the specific objectives that are behind it, what are the factors that motivate us to go for this transit oriented development? So what are the benefits that will arise out of this, right? So all the externalities that we saw, right, in the earlier weeks associated with transportation systems, right, those are minimized when we go for transit system as a primary mode of transport, right? So all these benefits will be obtained when we go for transit oriented development. So what are the principles that are behind this TOD, and how do we evaluate a particular transit oriented development system? If we develop a system in following this approach, how do we evaluate the effectiveness of it? So those were covered in lecture number 4. And in the final lecture of week 5, we will look at what are the specific steps, or what are the specific things that we have to look for, or that we need to consider when we are going for implementing these transit oriented systems, right? So from a field or a ground perspective, we were looking at those particular aspects in the final lecture. of week number 5. Okay, so with that, we will get into the questions related to these. So, question number 1 for week 5 is, which of the following constitutional amendment is related to land use in India? So, the options are 72nd, 73rd, 74th, 75th. Okay, we'll make use of the polls like as usual. Okay, we have an answer, option C. Okay, so the right answer is option C. It is the 74th amendment, right? So this particular amendment, so it brought in or it gave the it developed the concept of or gave the powers to the local governments, right? The at a final level, the urban local bodies and so on. So it gave them the right to do the land use planning, right? So the development related to the city planning or a town planning, for and the related things. So the rights for that was given to the local bodies through this amendment, which is the 74th amendment of the Constitution. Okay, so question number 2 is, according to the national TOD policy of India, the radius of the watershed is dash. So options are 500 to 800 meters, 800 to 1000 meters, 1000 to 1500 meters, and 1500 to 2000 meters. Okay, so we have one vote for option A. So the right option is also option A, is 500 to 800 meters. Okay, so what do we mean by watershed? So watershed is basically, so when you have a transit corridor or a transit station, right? So the area surrounding it from which you can reach or from which the people are willing to walk to reach the transit system, right? So the transit station, so that distance is called the watershed distance, right? So the maximum area that is covered by or the maximum area from which the people are willing to walk to reach the transit station, so that is what we call the watershed area. So so the maximum radius is what is being asked. So it is 500 to 800 meters. So this is a reasonable distance that people are assumed to walk, right? So 500 to 800 meters people can walk to reach the bus stop or a train station, right? If it is too long, then people will not be ready to walk. They will be thinking of other access modes, like they can choose autos or their personal vehicles to reach the station, or directly use their personal vehicles for their trip purpose, right? So but if it is in the walkable range, then people may be willing to walk to the transit station and then use the transit system, right? So according to the national TOD policy, this distance is kept as 500 to 800 meters, right? So we should have better accessible footpaths and so on in this region for to facilitate people to reach the transit system. Okay, question number 3 is, which of these is a feature of inclusive TOD? So the options are people-centric public spaces, walking and cycling friendly infrastructure, accessible public transit, and all of these. So we have one vote for option D. So right option is option D. It is all of these. Right. So as we have seen about the different goals of the sustainable development. So an inclusive development is also a very important part of it. Right. So what do we mean by an inclusive transit oriented development? Which means that the system should cater to every section of the society, right? It's not for any specific segment or any specific class, right? So whether regardless of age, gender, income levels, so everyone should be able to access the system and use it, right? It should not be difficult for one particular segment or right, rather than for the others. So it should be easier and convenient for everyone to use the system, right? So that's what we mean by an inclusive transit oriented development. And so for it to be an inclusive system, so it should have certain features, right? So as we see in the options, so first is people centric public spaces, right? So it should be more people friendly. That means like the development or the design of the public spaces should be such that people are given more importance, right? Right, so there should be like benches, wider footpaths, right? So that people are more able to use these public spaces. And so B is walking on cycle friendly infrastructure, right? So we should have like dedicated cycle lanes, right? So that people can safely ride cycles. And again, for walking we have better footpaths, wider footpaths and so on, so that people prefer walking. So this would reduce the demand for personal vehicles. And third is accessible public transit. Again, the stations, as we saw in the previous question, right? We talked about the walkshed area. So it should be, at a reachable location, right? And also people should also be able to use the transit system to reach their destination of interest, right? So if only you can reach your destination, then only you will be using it. So if you're not able to reach your destination, then you will not be willing to use the transit system. So it should provide better connectivity, and it should also be easily accessible and reachable from your location. So in that case, it will be people will be willing to use it, right? So therefore all these are required for the transit oriented development to be inclusive for all sections of the society, right? So therefore the right option is D. Okay, question number 4 is the three value framework for the TOD assessment is given by dash. The options are Asian Development Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and United Nations Development Program. Okay, so we have the answer as C. So the right option is option C. It is World Bank. Okay, right. So this is one of the evaluation methods that is proposed, right? So the World Bank has given this three value framework for evaluating the transit oriented development, right? So what is this three values that you are talking about is the node value, the place value, and the market potential value, right? So by node value, what do we mean is what is a node? So when you talk about transit networks, so these transit stops or stations, they form the nodes, right? So the importance of having a particular transit station or a stop, so that is assessed by the node value, right? So then we have the place value. So the place value is basically it assesses the importance or the quality of the services that are available in the neighborhood of a particular transit stop or a station, right? So that is in the second value, the place value. And the third is the monetary market potential value. So this basically assesses the demand for the land at that particular location or surround or in the adjacent areas of the transit corridor, right? So that those are the three values. So this particular framework that is given by the World Bank assesses these three values to evaluate a transit oriented development. that is the facilities before the transitory development. So question number 5 is the Millennium International Seaport Fund project is funded by Dash. Options are International Finance Corporation, Asian Development Bank, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, and the New Development Bank. So we have one more for option A. So the right option is option A. It is the International Finance Corporation that funded this international seaport project. Right. So the others we saw in different case studies. Right. So Japan International Cooperation Agency, they funded the high-speed rail project, between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. So the ADB we saw, they were the funding agency for the inland waterway project in China. Right. So the IFC is a body of the World Bank, so that funded this international seaport project in Kerala. Right. So the right option is A. Okay, so maybe you can try to log out and log in. Sometimes that will fix the issue. Or I'll try to stop sharing and reshare the screen. Okay, so you can try to do that. I'll continue. Question number 6 is Delhi Metro is an example of dash. So the options are Greenfield TOD, Brownfield TOD, Suburban TOD, and none of these. Any answer? Delhi Metro is an example of dash. Option A is Greenfield TOD, option B is Brownfield TOD, option C Suburban TOD, option D is none of these. Okay, so we will take a look at the answer. So the right option is option B. It is a brownfield TOD. Okay, so what do we mean by this? So this, it is a metro project. So therefore, it is a transit-oriented development project, right? So there is no issues there. So it is a transit-oriented development project. So we have to choose between it's a greenfield, brownfield, or suburban, right? So what is a greenfield project? So it is basically when you start a project, at a new site, from scratch, right? And then it is a greenfield project, right? So as the name is in the greenfield, so it is a new project at a new place, without any development activities happening there before, right? So that is a greenfield project. So it will have a lot of advantages in terms of because there is no development that is already going on. So you have a lot of flexibility in designing this the project that you are working on, right? So there won't be much issues or conflicts that are arising out of it, right? So whereas a brownfield project is basically the opposite, right? So you are developing the system in a region which has already developments available, right? So basically this Delhi metro was developed in an urban area, right? So in the city of Delhi, so where all the establishments, all the facilities, all the residential areas which have been already developed, so in that this metro system is being introduced, right? So therefore it is a brownfield project, right? So this has comparatively more difficult or challenging to implement than a greenfield project, because you have to work with the constraints that are already in place, right? So you should not be disturbing the existing facilities and developments, and therefore have to accommodate this metro system within the already existing developments. Okay, therefore it is a brownfield project. So therefore it is more challenging and difficult, and also cost wise can be more than compared to a greenfield project. Right. So therefore this is Delhi Metro is an example of the brownfield project, because it was taking place in the already established land, and the other one suburban, it is when it is being developed in a suburban region. That is not applicable in this case. So the right option is option B. It is a brownfield TOD. Okay, question number 7 is for high density development and transit oriented development, the minimum floor area ratio should be dash. So the options are A 100 to 300%, B 300 to 500%, C 500 to 800%, and D none of these. Any answer? Okay, so let's take a look at the right option. So the right option is option B, 300 to 500%. Okay, so let's first try to understand what is this floor area ratio. So basically, floor area ratio is nothing but the ratio of the total area of all the floors in a building, divided by the area of the land upon which the building is built. Okay, so if you have multiple stories, multiple floors, then you will have a higher floor area ratio, than a single, if you only have a single floor building, right? So that is the floor area ratio. The question is, what should be this minimum floor area ratio if we say the development is a high density development, right? So which means that, as you can see, for high density development, which means that there should be higher floor area, right? So when it is 100%, what does it mean? There is only a single floor, right? So the floor area, or the total floor area, is same as the area of the land or the ground on which the building is built, right? So that is 100%, right? So for high density, so high density means, there should be, that's more area for people to live in or work, right? So a lot of people can live in a same place or work in a same place. So that's a high density development. So for that, actually the floor area ratio has to be higher, right, than 100%, right? So for high density development in the transit oriented development, this should be 3 times to 5 times higher, right? So which means, like, you can say like roughly 3 to 5 floors, right? So when you have such buildings in the the influence zone of the TOD, so we call that as a high density development in TOD, right? So this is generally preferable because we, as we have seen, the watershed area for a TOD is basically 500 to 800 meters. So within that region, if people are living, then they will be easily be able to access the transit system, right? So but this is a very compact region, and if more people have to be catered to, then the development in this region should be of high density, so that more people can be able to access this transit system, right? So therefore it is recommended to be between 300 to 500% minimum, right? So it should be at least 300 to 500%, so that this transit oriented development is successfully catering to all these people, right? So therefore the right option is B. So question number 8 is, the national TOD policy of India was released in the year dash. So the options are 2011, 2015, 2017, 2019. Any answer? Okay, so let's take a look at the answer now. So the right answer is option C, 2017. Right, so it is one of the recently brought policies, right? So the national TOD, the transit oriented development policy, was brought in the year 2017, right? So again, this was to to bring in the benefits of bringing the economic development and social development as well, because this caters, as we have discussed earlier, caters to the wide range of population, right? So everybody will be able to be get benefited, right? So this policy would be beneficial in uplifting people, providing them better access to opportunities and so on. So, and this was released in the year of 2017. So the right answer is C. And question number 9 is, which of the following is are the primary zonal classification of land use? The options are A, commercial, B, residential, C, agricultural, and D, all of these. Okay, so we have one vote for option D, all of these. So the right option is also all of these, right? So this is coming from the zonal classification, right? So when we were discussing about land use planning, right? So this zonal classification was introduced. So according to this, so we have four major classifications according to the socioeconomic criteria. So these are the commercial, right, residential, agricultural, and also we have industrial land use, right? So these are the primary or the four major categories or classifications for the zoning, right? So therefore all these three are part of it. So the right option is option D, it is all of these. Okay, question number 10 is, which of the following is not a part of the sustainability approach for land use in the transport sector? So option A is mixed land use, option B transit oriented development, option C is low density development, and option D is promoting non-motorized transport. We have one more for option A. Right. So the right option is actually option C. It is a low density development. Right. So here we are talking about the option which is not a part of the sustainability approach. Right. So when you are talking about sustainability, so which means that we have to so we look at each of these options and how we let us see how they uh, play for or against the sustainability approach. Okay. So first is the mixed land use. So what do we mean by mixed land use? So which means that you will find all the different types of activities that are taking place in a given given region itself, right? So it is not like you will find only industries at a particular point, all the commercial activities, markets at a particular site, and all the residential areas at a different site. If that is there, then it is not a mixed land use, it is dedicated land use. Right, but if you have a mix of all these, right, so you'll have residential areas, some entertainment activities, some markets, and everything within walkable distances. So then it is a mixed land use, right? So this is more preferable. Why? Because the need to travel will reduce, right? So because you find all these different activities taking place in the same area, on the same region, so you don't have to travel a lot to fulfill all the daily activities, right? So therefore this will reduce the the amount of travel that one has to take, right? So therefore this will also bring down all the negative aspects that are associated with the transport activities, right? So therefore this is more favorable and also promote sustainability. Second is transit oriented development. So again, as we have seen, this is favorable for sustainability because this reduces or favors transit as the primary mode, right? So and also helps people shift from personal vehicles to transit as their mode of travel, and also reduces the emissions and traffic congestion and so on. So this is also more sustainable. So third is low density development. So low density development is not sustainable, it's specifically when you combine it with the transit oriented development approach, right? As we have seen earlier, so high density land use is one of the factors that is to be considered when we are going for transit oriented development, because as you have seen, people for them to access the transit system, they should be closer to this transit corridors, right? So for that, and also for this to be possible to a large population, so high density development is necessary, right? So therefore, low density development does not help achieve sustainable transportation. And D, promoting non-motorized transport. Again, this also promotes sustainability because non-motorized transport is much more environmental friendly, and also socially also more beneficial for people because it has health benefits as well. So promoting non-motorized transport also promotes sustainability. Right, so therefore option A, B, D are part of the sustainability approach, and only C is not a part of it. So the right option is option C. Okay, question number 11 is the road pattern of central Delhi in India is follows dash. So option A is grid or block pattern. Option B is the star and block pattern. Option C is the star and circular pattern, and option D is a hexagon pattern. So we have one more for option C, star and circular pattern. So the right option is option C, it is the star and circular pattern. Right? So here we are talking about the road network of central Delhi. So this is one representation of this road network, right? So if you look at it, so we have the central region, and from here you have roads that are going away from this point in radial fashion, right? So these roads, if you look at them, so these are radiating away from the central region, right? So this is the star that we are talking about in the star pattern, and the circular pattern is nothing but these the ring roads that are connecting these the star the star pattern. So these this part, so this is roughly a circle. It's not a perfect circle. Approximately, this is a the circular pattern, following a circular patterns, right? So this will be these concentric circles, at different radiuses, right? So this, if you look at it, so this is the star and the circular pattern that is being followed here, right? So it's not a perfectly following that pattern, but it is approximately, if you have to put it into one of the categories that we have that we have predefined, so this is more closely resembles the star and the circular pattern, right? So within these regions, so we have these different segments, right? So this could be developed in different fashions. So within this we could have block development and so on. Here we do not see that, but it is possible. So within this region we can have other forms of development as well. Okay, so with that, moving on to question number 12. The rebuild of an area or locality into a more affluent and well-developed neighborhood is termed as dash. Options are gentrification, Van Thunen model, Sitar planning, and garden city. Okay, we have one vote for option A. So the right option is also option A. It is gentrification, right? So basically, this what is given is the definition of the term gentrification, right? So it is rebuilding or modification or redevelopment of an area, right? So that which is basically already existing, right? So it is not being developed from scratch or being built from scratch. So we are modifying it or rebuilding that particular area, right? So into a more affluent and well developed neighborhood, right? So it means all and this is like catering to people from higher class. So they, because it is well developed, it is more affordable for people, or more appealing to the people of the higher class. So whereas this is not really, sometimes this is not takes care of the or affordable for the low and the middle class people, right? So that's the term of gentrification, which is rebuilding an area for more affluent and well developed as a more developed and neighborhood. So the other three Van Thunen models, so these are models for the land use planning. So all these three, the Van Thunen model, the Sitar planning, and the garden city. So these are different approaches or models that have been proposed, for use in the land use planning concept. Okay, so those are not related to what is being defined here. So the right option is A, gentrification. Okay, question number 13 is a numerical problem. A city of 50 square kilometers has a 100-kilometer long road network. What will be the network density of the city? The options are 5,000 per kilometer, 2 kilometer per square kilometer, zero point 0.5 per kilometer, and zero point 0.5 kilometer per square kilometer. Okay, so we have one option for option B. So the right answer is also option B. It is 2 kilometers per square kilometer. Right. So how do we find the network density? So what is network density? So it is nothing but the total length of the road network divided by the total area, right? So this will give you the network density, right? So which means like per square kilometer area of the city, if you take per square kilometer, what is the length of the road that you will find on average, right? So that's what we mean by the network density. So in the given problem, so the total length of the road network is 100, right? 100 kilometers. And what is the total area of the city? It is 50 square kilometers. Right? So 100 by 50, it is 2 kilometers per square kilometer, right? So that is given in option B. So the right option is option B, 2 kilometers per square kilometer. Okay, so a follow-up question is question number 14. So if there are 200 sections of road in the city that is mentioned in the previous question, so what would be the eta index of the city? Okay, so the options are 20,000 square kilometer, option B 2 per kilometer, option C is 0.005 per kilometer square, and option D is 0.5 kilometer. We have one vote for option B 2 per kilometer. So the right option is actually option D, it is 0.5 kilometers. Okay, so how do we find that? So what is this eta index? So eta index is nothing but the average link length, right? So we have links. So in the road network, so links are nothing but the road sections that are connecting the different intersections, right? So in this case, the link is nothing but a road section or a road segment connecting two intersections, right? So if you look at there are 200 sections in the city. So all these 200 sections will not be having the same length, right? So some will be longer, some will be shorter, right? So we don't know what is the length of each link, but we know what is the total length of the road network, right? So as we have seen in the previous question, it is 100 kilometers long, right? So we know the total length of the all the links, right, put together. So that is total length is 100 kilometers, right? and we know the number of sections in the city is 200, right? So as I said, eta index is nothing but the average link length. How can we get the average link length? So it is the total link length divided by the number of links. So that will be 100 by 200. Right? So 100 by 200 is nothing but 0.5. Right? So 0.5, this is the average length of a particular average length of a link in this city network. Right? So half a kilometer is the eta index for this city. Right? So density is within 1 square kilometer area. What is the link length that we can find on average? Whereas eta index is not based on area, it is per link. Okay, so what is the average length of a link? So that is the eta index. So the units you can see, so here it is only kilometers, whereas the network density is kilometers per square kilometer. Okay, so the eta index, so if you look at it, it should be whether it should be smaller or larger. So smaller eta indexes are preferable, right? So when preferable when we are trying to give more preference to pedestrians, right? So because why? Because when the lengths are smaller, so they will a pedestrian will be able to reach the particular intersection much with lesser walking, right? So when they are reaching intersection, they will be having the option to travel or find a bus much more easily, right? So rather than having larger link lengths, then people have to walk longer on average to access a public transit system, right? So therefore this is much more preferable for pedestrian oriented development system. Whereas on the other hand, when the eta index is too small, that can also lead to more congestion. Why? Because the intersections will be happening occurring more frequently, right? So small links, which means that the intersections are being more closer together. So at intersections, there will be since there are multiple approaches and there are more conflict chances of conflicts happening in the traffic movement. So there will be the movement will be slower, and therefore the congestion may increase, right? So but if we are going for a transit oriented development, then this is more favorable because we are trying to promote the non-motorized transport more, right? So that is the trade-off that we have with respect to the eta index, whether it is smaller or larger. Okay, question number 15 is the watershed area for a metro is dash that of a bus transit system. So the options are equal to, lower than, greater than, and half. Okay, so we have one vote for option C. So the right answer is also option C. It is greater than, right? So we have already looked at what watershed area is, right? So it is the the area or the region from which people are ready to access a metro or a public transit station through walking, right? So we saw this should be between 500 to 800 meters for a public for a transit oriented development, right? So as per our the TOD policy, but within that we have bus systems and metro systems, both are transit systems, right? So if we compare the watershed area for both, then people generally are willing to walk more to catch a train than to catch a bus, right? So that is generally how people prefer, right? So because basically trains are much more, probably because trains are much more schedule, adhere to the schedule, right? So than bus systems. So maybe that is one of the factors that people are willing to walk more, even for catching a train rather than a bus, right? So but the general thing is that people are willing to walk more for metros than for buses, right? So the right option is C. The walk shed area is greater for metro. Okay, question number 16 is, which of the following is not a barrier to implementing transit-oriented development? So the options are A, balanced mix of uses and activities. Option B is neglected urban design at the neighborhood and street level. Option C is inadequate policies, regulations, and supporting mechanism. And option D is financial constraints. So we have one more for option D, financial constraints. So the right option is option A. It is the balanced mix of users and activities. Right. So again, here the question is, which is not a barrier, right? So which does not affect for a transit oriented development project, right? So which is favorable, right? So that is the question. So here we have a balanced mix of uses and activities. So as we have already seen, so this is nothing but the mixed land use that we discussed earlier, right? So balanced mix of uses and activities, the different, so there is opportunities to perform different activities in a particular neighborhood, right? So this is much more favorable for a transit oriented development because, for example, even if you have to, if this particular neighborhood is somewhat away, and you are able to reach that neighborhood through a transit system. So once you reach there, you can perform all these activities that are in the neighborhood through walking itself, right? And then you can catch the train or bus and come back to your place, right? So which means that you don't have to go to longer distances to perform each of the different activities, and therefore it is more favorable to just use a transit system than taking a personal vehicle, right? So this promotes, or this is more favorable for doing the transit oriented development, and this is not a barrier, right? So this does not negatively affect your transit oriented development, so therefore this is not a barrier. So the right option is A. So whereas if you look at B, C, and D, so B says neglected urban design at the neighborhood and the street level, which means that there is no proper land use planning that is being done, right? So which is basically it's the opposite of A, right? So that there is no proper neighborhood planning, and then there is no proper street level planning also. Again, this will affect your accessibility to the transit system, right? So this is a barrier to the TOD. Option C, inadequate policies, regulations, and supporting mechanisms. Again, this will be a barrier, thus does not, help or support the TOD development. And option D, financial constraints. Again, if you do not have, enough funding, the required funding, again, you cannot, properly implement the transit-oriented development systems, right? Why? Because, for example, you go for a metro system, the costs associated with it are huge, right? And particularly when you know have to go underground stations and all this, so this will be several times higher, the cost will be several times higher than going for just building roads or flyovers, right? So the financial constraints also will be a barrier when you want to go for a transit oriented development. Therefore this also is a barrier, and therefore the right option is option A. It is the balanced mix of uses and activities. Okay, question number 17 is the Naya Raipur BRTS system is an example of dash. So option A, Greenfield TOD, option B, Brownfield TOD, option C, Suburban TOD, and option D, none of these. Okay, so we have one more for option A. Sorry, I lost my internet connection. Okay, so we were looking at this question 17 and we had, okay, am I audible now? Okay. Yeah, so I just lost my internet connection, so sorry for that. We were looking at question number 17 and we had one option for A, right? So the right answer is also option A. It is a greenfield TOD project, right? So we already discussed, right, what is the difference between a greenfield and a brownfield project. It's again here we are looking at a BRTS system. So BRTS stands for a bus rapid transit system, right? So this is also a transit oriented development project, right? So now we have to choose between whether it is a greenfield or a brownfield or a suburban, right? So again, this is Naya Raipur BRTS. So this is a project that is built, like a satellite city of Raipur, right? So which means it is built at a new location, right? So that is that did not have developments that were there earlier, right? So this is starting from scratch. There is a lot of flexibility in planning that this brings in, right? So this is not having any constraints from the existing development. So this is a greenfield transit oriented development. Okay, so there is a question of what is a brownfield project. So the brownfield project is basically the opposite of a greenfield, right? So greenfield is something that you start from a scratch in a new site, that is not having any existing facilities or developments that have already happened, right? So that is a greenfield one. So brownfield is nothing but something you're trying to build a system in a region that has already existing facilities and developments that have already taken place, right? So we saw in one of the earlier questions Delhi Metro as a brownfield TOD project, right? So because before the Delhi Metro system came, we already had all these residential and commercial areas that were established, right? So it is in an urban setting, right? So all these developments have already taken place, right? So and within that, so we also had the bus systems and everything that was integrated, right? So on top of this, this metro system was being introduced. So this is not a greenfield, that was a brownfield project, because to an existing system, to an existing developed region, So a new project is being implemented. So that is the brownfield project, right? So in that case, the limitation of that is that because you have already this developed land, so you have to take care of uh, without disturbing those things. You have to take care of this new system that you are introducing, right? So there is lot more constraints that comes in the brownfield project. Okay, so is that clear? Yeah. Okay. So question number 18. In a sustainable transport planning approach, land use should be done to promote non-motorized and public transport rather than prioritizing cars and personal vehicles. So we have to say whether the given statement is true or false. Okay, so we have one more for option A, that it is true. So the right answer is also option A, that the given statement is true. Right, so again this is we have seen this right from week one, right? So when we talk about sustainable transportation, so we want to minimize the externalities, right? So when we are promoting non-motorized and public transport, right, so we are minimizing the congestion in the city, the air pollution, noise pollution, everything comes down when we are promoting the NMTs and public transportation, right? So all these negative externalities that we have looked at, so these are aggravated when there is more demand for personal modes, right? So when people are using cars and other personal vehicles, so the all these negative externalities, they get amplified. So promoting the NMTs and public transportation, so that is the way to go in order to improve the sustainability of the transportation system. So the given statement also says that, so it is a correct and true statement. Okay, so the right option is A. Okay, question number 19 is, given that the other factors remain constant, the per capita annual CO2 emissions dash with dash share of PT and NMT. So PT stands for public transport, NMT for non-motorized transport. And the options are increases, increasing, B decreases, increasing, C remains constant, and increasing. Okay, so the first word in the option is for the first blank, and the second word is for the second blank. So we have an answer for option B, that it decreases and with increasing share. Right, so the right option is also option B. Right, so the emissions will decrease with increasing share of public transport. Right, so here we are looking at what is the relationship between the annual per capita CO2 emissions with the share of public transport and NMTs, right? So the share of PT and NMT is nothing but how many people are using public transport out of the population, of how many other people that are there in a city, right? So a certain percentage will be using non-motorized modes such as walking or cycling, and also public transit as their main modes, right? So and certain other population will be using their private personal vehicle. So if the number of people are the percentage of people who are using public transport and NMT, if they are higher, right, then you will have lower amounts of CO2 that are released, right? So this is intuitive, right? So because and this is the per capita emissions, right? So if more and more people are using the public transportation system, which means that there is lesser number of people who are using the personal vehicles, right? So which means that the emissions are coming from the personal vehicles, they are going to be reduced, right? So because these public transportation systems have higher capacity, see in a single bus, if there are 40 or 50 people who are traveling, so the emissions that are going to coming out is roughly the same, right? Regardless of how many people are using it, right? Even if 10 people are traveling or 50 people are traveling, the emissions coming out of that single vehicle making a trip is going to be roughly the same. Okay, so therefore if more people are using, which means the emissions per person is going to be smaller, right? So therefore if you look at it, so the per capita emissions will be lowering if more and more people are going to use the public transportation system. So this is the right relationship that we are looking at, right? So that's why we are promoting public transportation systems, right? So for sustainable, as a sustainable approach, right? So therefore B is the right answer. Okay, question number 20 is identify the road network pattern shown in the image, right? So this is the road network pattern of some city. Okay, so we want to find out what is the pattern shown here. So option A is block pattern, option B is the star and circular pattern, option C is hexagon pattern, and option D is the star and block pattern. So we have one answer for option C, hexagon pattern, right? So the right option is also option C, it is the hexagon pattern, right? So as opposed to the earlier ones that we have looked at, right? So we looked at the star and circular pattern, right? So this is, an hexagon pattern which is clearly visible, right? So we can see the, six sides, right? So, and this will be, further repeated, even in the outer periphery as well, right? So this is clearly a hexagon pattern that we are looking at, and within this again, so we have these, the radial, the roads that are, going outwards from the center of the city. So within that, so again, as we have seen, so these smaller regions or segments that are formed. So within that, we could have, other forms as well. So here again, we are going for a hexagon pattern even within that. So, but we can also have the block patterns as well. Right? So the block patterns, as we studied, so we'll always have the street networks that are intersecting at right angles. Right? So, but here, since we are going for hexagons even within that, so not all roads intersections are at 90 degrees. Right? So this is clearly a hexagon pattern, and this node network is particularly taken from Italian city, right? It's Gramsciel in Sicily. Okay, so this is the hexagon pattern that we are looking at. Okay, so with that, we are coming to the end of the questions for week 5. Where are the blocks? Yeah, here we are not going for block patterns in the middle. So I said that we could go for blocks within this intermediate regions. So we could have other patterns within that, right? So the larger or the overall pattern is the hexagon, and within that we could have other patterns. But here we are not having a distinctive block patterns. It's not. Yeah, so mostly seen pattern is the hexagon. So it's mostly an hexagonal plan. Okay. Any doubts? Okay, pattern mostly seen in India. So again, it is it's not there is nothing common or anything general or statics that is specified. It depends on the region, right? So mostly what we see is ad hoc development. There is no clear pattern that we will see because some of these olden cities, those the networks are developed after we have these these developments or the buildings that have come up, right? So it's not like everything, the road networks were pre-planned and the land use planning was done after that the city was built, right? So we already had most of these cities, and then to accommodate whatever developments have already happened, so accommodating that, the road networks came, right? So in most places we will not see any patterns that are these that come under these predefined categories. But in some cities, like in Chandigarh, where the city was developed through proper planning, so there we will see clear patterns from these arising out of these proper planning, right? So we will see the block patterns there, right? In Delhi we saw the star and the circular patterns and so on. So it's not a single pattern that is or one most common pattern that we can say. It depends on the region and the city and how it was developed. Okay, so any other questions or doubts from the previous week assignments or anything? Okay. Okay, so if not, we can wind up. Okay, so we'll meet again next Sunday. Okay, so in the meantime, if you have any question, we can post it in the discussion forum. Okay, yeah, thank you for attending.